going to bring you on. Dr. Christopher Brown coming your way at this time.
All right. Thank you for that introduction. I really appreciate it. As always, I love having a chance to call in to WVOE, like I said, that voice of Ebony, because it's always a good time. I always get to hear from folks, right? So good afternoon, listeners. You're locked into WVOE 1590 AM, the voice of Ebony, where your health is our heartbeat. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Brown, president and founder of PressureMDAcademy, welcoming you to another enriching session of Health Facts, the show where wisdom meets wellness and knowledge is always in season. All right. So we're about to begin a show. But before we begin that show, it's Black History Month, right? So we need to make sure we announce history. Well, 1590, WVOE first signed in 1962 and is the oldest African-American owned radio station in the South. So just to let you know, that's your Black history fact for the day, is that you're listening in to the oldest African-American owned radio station in the South. That's WVOE 1590 AM. All right, just want to give you that little bit of information. So today, that's right. Yeah. So today, what we're going to talk about is, this is part two of our session, talking to the men about the importance of health. We kind of went over a lot of topics last week, but this time, what we're going to talk about is for men, health and avoidance is rebuilding trust, reclaiming power, and navigating the system. Okay. So, we talked about the why men delay care, a lot of the reasons that are going on, that go into that decision making, and trying to reframe it, because a lot of times it gets it's very dismissed, oh, you're just scared, this, that, and the other. But there are reasons why men make the decision that they make. Okay. And so, we talked a little bit last time about, why that is, fear, masculinity, mistrust, history, bad experiences. We talked about all that last time. We also talked a little bit about the impact of what happens. Today, we're shifting gears. Okay. Today, we're going to talk about what comes next, how men can take control of their health without feeling judged, rushed, or dismissed. So this isn't about, men becoming the perfect, the perfect patient. This is about men becoming an informed patient. Okay. So that's what we're going to talk about today. All right. So the first part of this, we're going to redefine strength in health. Okay. For the longest time, and for the majority of people out there, strength has been defined as silence, endurance, the strong silent type, enduring, kind of pushing through. But let me offer maybe a different, you can think of it as framing, a different framework on strength. Okay. So especially when it comes to health, the definition of strength when it comes to health is, strength is knowing your numbers. Okay. Strength is asking questions. Okay. Strength is preventing problems before those problems turn around and control you. Strength is showing up for your family long term. Because if we think about this, I mean, this really becomes kind of this next level of strength, so that you're not instead of kind of pushing through, when it comes to health, becoming a little bit more empowered. You really are empowered. You're really taking control and taking leadership over your own health. So knowing your numbers, asking questions, preventing problems before they control you, and showing up for your family long term. And I think that piece right there for a lot of men, is learning to show up for the family long term. Yes, working today is what you need to do, and you got to put some bread on the table. You got to keep the lights on, but showing up for your family long term and understanding that taking that leadership of your own health helps you in that future. Okay. So the strongest men I know aren't the ones who ignore symptoms. They're the ones who plan ahead. All right. So, think about it. If you can manage a job, a household, a budget, a lot of the jobs a lot of the things that you do at work, and in other, at work, in different organizations, then you can manage your health. Okay. So one of the things that you'll need to do is to learn how to actually navigate the healthcare put air quotes, system. Okay, so healthcare in America, like I said, thinking about it as a system. There's some nuances to that, but whatever. But learning how to actually navigate the healthcare system. And step number one, and we've mentioned it on the show before. I mention it whenever I go out to talk to people. When I speak to people. Step number one is to start with a primary care clinician. Of course, normally I say physician, but there are nurse practitioners and PAs out there. So you need to make sure that you start with a primary care clinician. You don't need a specialist first. You need a home base, and the primary care clinician serves as your home base. Okay, and it's because primary care is prevention. You want to get to them before you need the specialist, right? This is where your trust is built. This is where patterns are noticed earlier. You kind of think of you can think of your primary care in the healthcare world. Think of primary care like a quarterback. They kind of guide the game, and that's what they do. They're kind of guiding the game, kind of telling you where to go. Like I said, you can go to them for questions. That's kind of a way to think about your primary care clinician. So that's kind of the start. You want to get one of those. And the other caveat is this, and I'll tell you right now, it's sometimes it's hard to get into primary care. There's a shortage of primary care clinicians out there. The wait time is long. So you want to go ahead and start that. You want to get one as soon as possible, because if you aren't already in, it can be hard to go find one. So you want to start with that home base first, right? So now once you get the primary care, then what do you want to do? What's another thing that can help you out? And that is, you want to prepare for your appointments. And this is something I think is really, it's probably not really new, but I think for a lot of men it will be new. Most people will set the appointment and you just show up. Okay. All right. Now my appointment's tomorrow at 1:00. I'm gonna show up, 1:00, maybe 12:50, so I can sign all them forms that they have us to sign. And then you just kind of go in. And then, the people ask, the nurse will ask a question, doctor asks questions, and then you mention something. And then of course you leave and man, I forgot to ask for those refills. Oh man, I forgot to tell them about my toe. And that's what happens a lot of times. Either that, or you wait until the last minute to mention something as the doc is going out the door, and you mention that, and then of course some people are okay with that. Some people get a little attitude because you're preventing them from going to the next patient. So what you want to do is you want to prepare for the appointments. Okay. Because a lot of bad healthcare experiences don't start with bad intention. They start with bad communication. Okay. So, if you want to get things taken care of, one of the things you can do before your visit is you want to write down 3 questions. Make up the questions, right? So if you're going to the appointment, even if it's a follow appointment, find something that you're curious about or about your health, and write down those 3 questions, right? Bring a medication list. Oh my God, bring the medication list, and if either bring the medication list or bring the meds. Sometimes if you don't feel like writing them all down, bring all the medication that you're taking, and that means all the supplements, everything. Put it in a bag, bring it out there, and bring that list. Or the other thing is we have technology. So what can you do now? Nowadays, you can take photos of your medications and bring them in. Just make sure they're clear, because I have had people bring photos, but of course the name is like kind of wrapped around the side. So sometimes it can be a little challenging. So make sure you bring that medication list, because that's going to be hugely important. And that medication list does include the supplements that you have. And so sometimes you might just want to write those down, right? And then the other thing you want to do, you want to be honest. Okay, whatever is going on, you want to be honest, because this, like I said, your health information that during that time is protected. But it's hard to take care of people if you're people if you're hiding something. All that information is hugely important. So you want to be honest, no shame. So you want to be able to ask them, okay? And you want to ask things like, if they tell you that you have an abnormal lab, you want to ask things like, what does this mean for me? Okay. Ask what happens if I do nothing, and ask, are there lifestyle options before medication? That's a powerful one. Are there lifestyle options before medications? Because if you ask that may trigger. Hey, okay, well, technically speaking, yeah, you could lose a little weight, and like I said, you may not need this medication. And a plan can be derived based off of that that statement to kind of help you out a little bit. But I do think that these questions are kind of powerful. Now, and I'll give you an example of one for what happens if I do nothing, because I've had people. Of course, I'm a kidney doctor, so one of the things I do is I manage people whose kidneys are failing, and I've had patients that their kidneys are failing, and I say, hey, it's time for you to go on dialysis, and individual says, no, I'm not going on dialysis. There's no way I'm going on dialysis. I've seen people on dialysis going, 3 days a week to those clinics, and I'm not going. I refuse, absolutely refuse. Now, I heard the guy, so I was like, well, okay, so are you ready to die? And as soon as I said that, he was like, whoa, what do you mean? I'm like, well, the reason we're putting you on this is because your kidneys are not working anymore. They're not able to sustain life. And so, I can't tell you if it's going to be 2 days or 2 months, but you're with where they are, you'll die. And he's like, oh, I didn't realize that the dialysis was saving somebody's life. So, so this is one of those times that I think because we had a rapport, he was able to express this. And because I knew to ask a few more questions, we were able to sort it out and let him know about what his decision to do nothing was going to do. Okay, so so we want to make sure we ask the good questions, because remember, doctors, we work better when patients are partners. So like I said, if you bring some information in, it kind of helps us to kind of sort things out, right? Okay, now what to do if you feel dismissed? Okay, because we gotta be honest, right? Not every interaction is positive. So you might have a negative interaction, and it could be, the front desk person, the nurse, the doctor. If you feel like you've been dismissed, then we need to have language for how to address this. Okay, because one of the things that happens, okay, we're guys, feel dismissed, you disrespect me, right? So I'm ready to blow up. But if we give men language to address this in a productive manner, okay, so I just want to let you know, I don't feel that my concern was addressed. Okay. Or, hey, appreciate it, Doc, but can you explain chronic kidney disease in plain language? Or like, hey, hey, that maybe we found out that you have a diagnosis of something like cancer, but you're a little skeptical. Hey, I appreciate what you've done for me, but can I have a second opinion about my need for, or like for me for dialysis? I need a second opinion about my need for dialysis. Okay, so that sort of language helps you to engage in a productive manner with individuals in the healthcare system, because a lot of times, especially like I said, especially for brothers, we get offended and we're ready to lash out in a defensive manner because like I said, history and social context. But to provide men with with the language of how to address these issues can be the difference between you getting kicked out of a clinic. All right, because don't get it wrong, like some of these clinicians will kick you out of their practice if you are what they perceive as overly aggressive or not interacting in a positive manner. So you can get kicked out of a clinic. But this sort of language where you're addressing the issues. You're addressing the issues in a constructive manner, or in a manner that the people in the office are more familiar with, is a way to address this, to achieve the goals that you're trying to get, which is to take care of your health, in a manner that everybody, that this situation or this relationship, really, because you got a relationship with your doc, can continue to go on. Okay, so making sure that because advocating yourself, because remember, advocating for yourself is not disrespectful, it is responsible. And really, at the end of the day, everybody understands that. But sometimes it's the language that we choose or the actions that we choose can be the difference between this advocacy proceeding in a positive manner, or there being some negative interactions there. Okay. Now, I'm actually going to talk a little bit about my fellow colleagues, right? I'm going to speak to some of these colleagues first, and that is, kind of in that same manner. And this is some stuff you can look for in your clinicians whenever you look for them, because a clinician should listen first, diagnose second. And I tell you, this can become difficult because the systems that we operate in don't always allow the time to do this. But if you get someone that will listen first to what's going on there, kind of go through the labs and then give you the diagnosis, that can provide a much better experience. They shouldn't be assuming that you're not compliant. They should be asking the questions: Why are you not taking the medication? Because that can lead to a more productive relationship. Because and I've done this before, you assume somebody's just not taking the medication, but then you ask that second question: Hey, why are you not taking the meds? Oh man, that's causing my stomach hurt. Oh, okay. Well, in that case, let's get you something else to either take care of the stomach pain or to get you another medication altogether. They should be respectful of cultural context, and that is hugely important. Actually, there's training and stuff of that nature for clinicians to make sure that they respect culture. And when I say culture, I mean like that's food, the approach to medicine, the whole nine yards. One of the things that that kind of gets up on the I'm from the South, so of course we eat some stuff that may not be the most the most healthy, but there's a way to address that in a healthy manner. You don't automatically just dismiss people's food and their culture without gaining a greater understanding of what's going on there. The clinicians should be they should be knowledgeable in medical jargon, but understand how to use plain language, and also be willing to address fear directly. And so if, like in that instance where the guy was basically scared of dialysis, being able to address that, elicit that person's response and then address that fear directly, because trust is built when a patient feels seen and not managed. So you got to address them on kind of on a holistic manner. And so for all the clinicians that may be listening out there, just remember that a good interaction today can save a life 5 years from now. Yeah, I go back to that example we just provided. This guy was about to, if we didn't get that extra information, this guy was going to leave the clinic and decide just not to get dialysis, and that could have led to a bad outcome, right? So the other thing we want to do is we want to make sure we integrate herbal, cultural, and modern care. Okay, because a lot of guys they really have a health. We really have a healthcare system. All right, it just doesn't look like a clinic. It doesn't look like traditional Western medicines. Okay, so if you're taking a tea, if you're doing a cleanse, that stuff needs to be acknowledged, because it is part of a healthy system, a health system. It's a way to keep people healthy. Like I said, grew up in the South, so of course we all, there was, black draw. You had, the whiskey honey for cough. You had these certain teas and tonics and stuff of the nature that everyone used to address certain issues. And so, a lot of times, men have that health system, and that is more familiar, and that may be the first thing that they address. And so when you go in, like I said, you should be looking for someone that acknowledges, okay, you took this, these three, tonics or whatever, and it didn't work, and understand that is also part of our health system, because that's what that person took first. That did not work, and now you're coming into the clinic, Western medicine, for lack of a better word. And now we need to look into other things. Okay, so so you got a cough, you took your black draw, you took your whiskey honey, and you still got the cough going on. All right, well, maybe you've already done that before you come in. I need to acknowledge that, because that may change, how I approach, because you're not coming in untreated. You're not coming in untreated. You've been, addressing this at home. So now, and this has been 2 weeks. Okay, I don't need to give you something and then wait another 2 weeks to get an X-ray or whatever. I might want to get a chest X-ray today. I might want to get a chest X-ray. Hey, you've been working those 2 weeks, still there? Let's take this chest X-ray. Oh, it's a pneumonia here. All right, here you need these type of antibiotics. Okay, so that's something that needs to be addressed and needs to be, it needs to be really respected. Okay, so you got that. If there are other family, the family advice and things of nature that go into the culture, and that stuff needs to be addressed and intercalated into the clinic visit. Okay. So, because one of the mistakes is when men feel they have to hide these things from the doctor, So yet again, we go back to this need for honesty. We really need a great relationship with your clinician, with your physician, needs to be honest. So if you rolled up a couple to a couple, that's how you address your pain. That needs to be acknowledged. Okay, so the mistake a lot of people do is when they hide things from when they hide things from the doctor, because this could what you're doing at home could be interacting with some of the medicine that we give, or may need to be considered with some of the medication that we give. Okay, so always tell your clinician what you're taking, everything that you're taking. Ask about interactions, and one of the things about herbals is that sometimes we don't know. I mean, like I said, there's not really a study about how your herbal tea from South China interacts with your blood pressure medication. We may just not have that. Now, there's a warning on it. It might be that might be able to be researched, but we may not know about all of those. Like I said, most of the drug interactions that are studied are between the FDA or true medications that are studied all the time, and there's a reporting system going on. So, but nonetheless, you really should let that be known, and just understand that everything that's taken may not have a proper record. Okay, and then combine tradition and evidence safely. Make sure that's okay. And like I said, healthcare works best when honesty goes both ways. Now, there might be some folks that just say, "Hey, look, I'm not going to take care. You're taking all these meds, all these herbals. I'm just not comfortable with it." And that is that clinician's prerogative. That's that physician's prerogative to say, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable with the potential for interactions." But if everyone is honest, at least everybody knows where everybody stands. Okay. All right. Cool. So we got that. Now, okay, so this other one is where we want to address an issue that I really think um, underlies a lot of misunderstanding, and a lot of and belies a lot of mistrust. Okay, and that is health literacy. Again, I know you defined health literacy before, but health literacy is a tool for empowerment, understanding what's going on, and how the healthcare works, not just how the healthcare works, but also the terms, the out, the um, yeah, the terms and what happens if you don't do certain things, or just how to interact with the system, is all kind of part of health literacy, and that is a tool for empowerment. Health literacy is power. Uh, Kind of like we said before, with the giving language to your frustration, and if you got the proper language, your frustration is more likely to be addressed in a productive manner. And so, health literacy, same thing. Learning terms, learning your numbers, and and that how that translates into, really, honestly, I'm telling you right now, a higher level of respect within this healthcare community, right? So health literacy is power. So so and there are two sides of that. So one is from the physician side, and that is the need to explain terms, inquire, make sure things are properly addressed. And then the other side is from the patient side, and that's what we're going to talk about. That is, uh, understanding terms, knowing what questions to ask, recognizing, like I said, when, hey, maybe this interaction is not productive, or maybe I don't understand what's being said, and learning how to ask those questions, and then knowing when to follow up. And like I said, that's both sides. Sometimes everything can't be addressed in that 10-minute physician visit. You might have to come back later on, and both you and the clinician need to come to an agreement with that. Hey, got a lot of questions here, can't address everything. We're gonna make sure you're safe, and then, like I said, we're gonna bring you back in a week to kind of address everything else. Okay. And so health literacy is important, and when it comes to health literacy, there's a strong relationship between regular literacy and health literacy. So, and because of course I do public health stuff too, right? So as regular literacy kind of drops, this is going to is going to bring down health literacy as well. And especially in an era where, I think you've probably seen on TV where individuals are able to graduate from high school, functionally illiterate. No, so if you're one of those people and you didn't do well reading and stuff of nature in high school, maybe you were young and just kind of, hey, you look immature, so you just kind of you slid by and you got your, maybe they gave you the high school diploma, but you really don't know how to read. I would encourage you to start looking for resources. There are resources out there where it's adult literacy programs where they will teach you the stuff that you didn't learn in high school. And this is part of, becoming more health literate. If you can read better, if you can understand, if your vocabulary, as your vocabulary grows, this is going to empower you to take it, to advance your health literacy. And that's going to be very beneficial, and well, I guess in everything, right? But and as we talk about health, that's going to be very beneficial as you go from primary care to the specialist, or if you have a health condition that's starting to worsen, being able to understand the terms, being able to understand this and read is going to be extraordinarily powerful for you. So don't make the excuse, oh, I didn't learn it in high school. Oh, I didn't learn to read good then, or they didn't teach me, they didn't teach me like they're supposed to. Don't let that stop you from learning. If you and I know sometimes you might feel like you're a little old. I'm 30 years old, I'm too old to learn. Oh, I'm 50 years old, I'm too old to learn. Like, as long as you're breathing, okay, as long as you're breathing, you can learn. Okay, as long as you can open up them eyes and read, you can learn. As long as you can, you can walk and you can make it you can learn. So that attitude has to permeate your mind, that I am going to go ahead and learn a little bit more today, so that I will know more tomorrow than I know today. And that attitude, if you had it towards regular literacy, it can also apply to the health literacy, and that's going to empower you whenever you're inside of these healthcare communities. Okay, so when men understand the system, and listen. So when you understand the system loses its power to intimidate. Okay. And this is for any system that goes on. Like, as you understand that system, something changes with the way you interact with it. That system will lose its power to intimidate you. You become empowered, all right? And so as you become empowered, you now can challenge the system. You can make that system, do what you need it to do. Like I said, okay, so now you're not intimidated. You're just not as scared. Okay. You do not be afraid. We're a Christian radio station. Do not be afraid. That's one of the things we're supposed to do as Christians, is not be afraid of things. But it's easy to be scared of something that you don't understand. And yes, the doc should learn how to talk normal terms of the nature, but also as a patient, this is your body. This is your body. It's not the doctor's body, it's your body. This is your body. So you need to take control. You need to become empowered. You need to go learn what you need to learn, and do not use the excuse of whatever happened or didn't happen whenever you were younger. You start today to make that step towards a brighter tomorrow. Okay, so let's make sure that we do that. And there are other things you can do as well. Like I said, if if you just really have struggle and you just maybe don't have that capacity, make sure you bring a family member with you. And you can bring a family member physically, like, hey, sister, can you go with me? Brother, can you go with me? Or, most of us have these phones. So what you do is say, hey, I know you're working and you got a lunch break. I got an appointment at 1:00. Can you make yourself available so that I can call you and you can listen whenever the doc comes in? I do this a lot with my family. So if my family's going into, if they're going into a clinician visit and they got some questions or whatever, or maybe they didn't have a good good interaction last time, I say, hey, take your phone in there and just call me and we listen. And I just listen in. And you can do the same thing with any family member that you want to. So your son, daughter, father, mother, Like I said, you can do that. You can also ask for written instructions, ask them to write the stuff out. And like I said, when you take a look at it, make sure that you understand it or have someone explain it to you. And if you have to come back for another appointment to get that explained, then go ahead and do that. And then and then also look around for, trusted community resources. There may be resources that will help you to understand things a little bit better. Okay. And I know we're running out of time here. So, but okay. And so why are we doing this? Why is Dr. Brown, specialist, all these titles and stuff of nature doing this? Because the payoff is positive care experiences matter, right? Men who have positive healthcare relationships are more likely to take their medications correctly. They're more likely to attend the follow-up visits. You catch diseases earlier, you avoid hospitalizations, you live longer, healthier lives. And this is not theory, it's outcomes. As you have these positive relationships, you're going to interact with that healthcare community or healthcare system in a very different manner, and you will start to trust, and you will start to reveal the things that are going on. And as you reveal that, now once somebody sees it, now they can take care of it. And from a preventive standpoint, this is huge. And like I said, I focus on high blood pressure. Why? Because high blood pressure affects so many things. So if you come in, we get this thing taken care of. And if I find out if you say, hey, well, doc, I know you're prescribed 3 medications. I'm only taking 2 because I ain't like the one. Guess what? Now we get, all right, bro, why didn't you say that before? Okay. So if that doesn't work, I got like 200 other medications I can use. And we substitute another one. So this is why positive care experiences matter. And, yes, the clinician should be better, but also I want you to know that you have not only a role and responsibility, but also an ability to change the way that you interact with that system or that community. Okay. So, like I said, trying to wrap this up here, but let me leave you with this, that avoiding the doctor doesn't protect you. It just delays the answer. That answer is there. If you got cancer, the cancer is there. If you got high blood pressure, the blood pressure is there. You got diabetes, the diabetes is there. So, avoiding the clinic doesn't protect you. It doesn't do anything. It just delays the answer. Okay. And your health is not a weakness. It's a responsibility. You have that responsibility. You have the ability to address that. And, the responsibility is to your family, to your community, to yourself. One of the things, and especially as I talk to, African American men, because I do, I get it. A lot of times the world seems very dismissive of you, but do not underestimate your importance to your family, to your community, and to yourself. Okay. Do not underestimate that. You are important. Okay. So this is, I'm just wrapping up Health Facts. I'm Dr. Christopher Brown. If this conversation helped you, please share it. Start the conversation, start that next step. And like I said, thank you for tuning in, whether it's you're on the live stream, the recording, or if you're on WVOE, the voice of Ebony at 1598.